Welcome, and thank you for joining me for this introductory webinar, which features concepts of modern automotive sales. Now, as I have said in numerous emails, and please keep in mind of this is not a sales process in itself. This is an augmentation. It is not a deviation. It is not an alteration. It is a supplementation. What it does is it helps us get through our sales process, some of these concepts, ideas, strategies, and tactics, more efficiently, more quickly. And that obviously increases our volume, and it also increases our gross profit. So as we move forward, the first thing I'd like to go ahead and do is define counter. Now, a counter is something that's involved in the technique counter, transition, close. But a counter is simply this. A counter is a near immediate, thoughtful, effective response to a customer concern, negative comment, or inaccurate interpretation of information. And we're going to talk about interpretation of information because, boy, I'll tell you what, there's a lot of that going on and it's false. And the customer's generally doing that. So it's something that you and I have to take a look at very, very closely so that we can correct that. We have to go ahead and interpret the information for them. We have to interpret the data for the customer. But anyway, this is generally in the form of a false conclusion drawn. Okay, a positive value statement may be used as a counter. A positive value statement is simply something, again, that builds value. It's exactly what it sounds like. For instance, if I say that this vehicle has been selling very, very well for quite a bit more than this figure, that's a positive value statement, and you can utilize them. So now that we know what a counter is, I want to go ahead and jump into trade concerns. Now, why would I want to jump into trade concerns? First of all, it's because I think it's a really meaty area, and I want to start this webinar with something that has a lot of value, of course. But the fact of the matter is that there's a lot of sales consultants, particularly the newer, inexperienced sales consultants or the ones that are lacking certain confidences, that don't want to include a trade-in in the deal. They'd much rather have it without a trade, less complicated. Instead of doing that, let's take a look at the opportunity like an experienced, confident sales consultant does. They look at it as an opportunity to build gross. They look at it as an opportunity to take in high quality product that they can go ahead and turn quickly to a good customer in their customer base. So let's talk about a basic counter to a trade-in concern. Now, before I do that even, I'm going to get into, let's talk about the concern. That's not enough for my trade. We've heard that quite a bit, I imagine. We probably hear it multiple times every day. The customer has certain ties to their vehicle, whether it be emotional, whether it be just sentimental, what have you. They have ties to it, of course, and there's other things too. There's data out there, and the interpretation of data is not always something that the customer is good at. We do it every day. We're going to get into that a little bit later, but keep that in the back of your mind, interpretation of data. But that's not enough for my trade. So at any rate, let's talk about 15 years ago, when I had a sales consultant who I really, really liked quite a bit, but he was a direct person. He was a big guy and could be intimidating. And he came to me and he said the customers were leaving because we didn't give them enough for their trade. Of course, I countered him. I said that when you told them that their trade was worth what it is for the same reason they can buy us for what they can, what did they say? And then he said, well, I didn't ask him that or tell him that. And I said, well, why not? We've been going over it for weeks now. And he got a little bit indignant and said, you do it. So I didn't really worry about the insubordinate part of it. I said, okay, let's go ahead and do that. And then I crossed my fingers because no close or no counter is foolproof. But what it does do is it gets you an extra 10%. And that extra 10% makes you from average to good. It gets you from good to great. It gets you from great to elite. And those are the things that we want to look for, is that extra 10%. And that's exactly what all of these, again, strategies and tactics are designed to do. So at any rate, that's not enough for my trade. The counter, the reason your trade is worth what it is the very same reason you can buy ours for what you can. You can even add the market is related that way. We're going to get into market-based pricing here in just a bit. So it's important to keep that in your thoughts. It's important to keep that in your mind. The reason your trade is worth what it is the very same reason you buy ours for what you can. Very, very important. I know for a fact that my trade is worth blank. Now again, we're going to get into, as I spoke about in the past, interpretation of data, where the customer is going to be taking a look at a number of different sources, and they're going to see what they want to see, right? They're going to see the highest number. They're not going to understand what affects the numbers, and we're going to get into that here in just a little bit. but I know for a fact that my trade is worth blank. Now, how do we do that? So once we've countered everything else, and I'm not utilizing everything that we do have at our disposal here at Hamilton Sales Training. I'm not utilizing everything that's in the books Beyond the Walk Around and the concepts of modern automotive sales, but we're just taking a few of them. But what if somebody says this? This is a little bit more difficult because they're being direct, they're being self-assured, they understand that. Now here's the interesting part. There is a counter for this, and it's extremely effective. Let's take a look. Now, perhaps from a retail perspective, we can tell them that. Maybe it is that from a retail perspective, but keep in mind that the market dictates, we're going back to market, dictates the value of your trade and the price that the pre-owned vehicle sells for. Now, here is a big key, and you can use this during your presentation. You can pepper it in anywhere, really. But make them understand how the market's related and how we want their business, we want their family's business, we want their friends' business, and we're going to treat them just as well, and we're going to treat them with courtesy and respect and give them great deals. We cannot overcharge your friend or family member just because someone thought the trade should be worth more. That's a key point. And it also kind of rings true because all of these things have to have that truth behind it. And that's the beauty of these. And remember, I said customers should be countered all the time. It's important. It continues to build value. It continues to keep us in a confident position. So let's talk about market-based pricing philosophy. All the sources in the marketplace make it a simple matter to price our vehicles and value trade-ins. Now, why would we want to make the market the source of our information? Well, simply because the customers believe they have information from everywhere else, other facilities. We want them to understand that they don't need to go to other facilities because the market sets the value. The facilities have very little leeway or room in this if they're doing it properly, if they're elite, if they're the facility they'd like to buy from. It's transparent. It's all transparent. Now, a lot of you out there are going to say, that's overused. Okay. It is what it is, but the customers understand that word, just like they understand deal, right? So, no games, no smoke and mirrors. Market-based pricing philosophy is helping us evolve this business. Again, market-based pricing gives us a platform. It gives us something to go from, rather than just, well, I'll give you this, or your car's worth this, or my manager said it was worth this, or how about you pay this? It's none of that. It's based entirely on the market and what the market dictates. I think you will find it is liberating to utilize that. So no matter what your pricing philosophy is and what your sales process is, remember I said it has nothing to do with the sales process, all of these concepts and ideas. It helps whatever process you're in. So no matter what that might be, you have this platform now. What's your best price? Well, folks, the market sets the price and it's changing all the time. So we'll go ahead and move forward and we'll find out exactly what the market is bearing on this day. You could also turn it back on the customer. Now, based on your research, and I know you've done some, what are your expectations? So now you've gone and turned that around. The market says this, or the market's going to say this. What does your data show you? Moving forward, Dale Pollock, founder of vAuto, and he wrote a number of different books, including Velocity, had much to say about this market-based pricing philosophy. Predominantly in used cars, but as we'll see, it does affect new cars as well. But again, it's all about how we interpret the data. And the company collects the data, sets values for the vehicles, particular sources in the marketplace, like sources such as Kelley Blue Book, Black Book, NADA, what have you, Edmunds, they're all out there. Carfax helps with this, and we're going to show you how that works in just a bit. So that has an effect on it. But the algorithms have been adjusted. And a lot of people don't talk about that over the past years. They're more in our favor now. But again, what Dale Pollock has done, and many people have certain opinions on what Velocity's done and how it's affected the used car business across the nation, and not a lot of them are positive. Although I don't care if it's positive or negative or indifferent, it is what it is. There's been influence. Now it's how we utilize that influence that gets us to the next point and the next step. Okay, there has been influence in the marketplace, and I think it's been to our benefit. You see more of a spread between retail and wholesale than maybe we've had before, particularly with vehicles of odd mileage, very high or very low mileage. So that's something we need to consider as well. And we talked about this. Okay, the market dictates both the price of the new vehicle as well as the trade-in. Again, going back to market-based pricing philosophy, you have to convey this to the customer, and it puts you in a far more powerful position, because once this becomes accepted, now you can start differentiating yourself. So if they're looking for a better deal, it's not going to be that much of a better deal, is it? Because the market dictates the pricing. And other facilities simply aren't going to stray from that, at least not by a lot. So now you're talking hundreds rather than thousands. You're starting to put those folks that have very, very erratic ideas of what they should be able, particularly in these times, buy a vehicle for, who are now coming into line and saying, okay, well, this makes sense. And we allow the manufacturers to go ahead and shoulder the burden of, discounts or special interest rates or whatever. Ridiculous offers. It goes back to the interpretation of data. We can set this right with market-based pricing philosophy and try to curtail the ridiculous offers. You don't have to insult the customer when they give you a ridiculous offer. Okay, they want half off the price of a vehicle. That's not going to happen. But you don't have to say it like that. It's not going to happen. That's impossible. I ever said, well, the market is bearing quite a bit more on these vehicles, but they are allowing for wonderful purchases right now, or wonderful deals. Let me show you what that's all about. So you can go ahead and take that ridiculous offer, not insult the customer, not have them lose face. Once they lose face, they're done. And they will go someplace else, and they'll spend more money to buy a vehicle they don't want just because they don't want to come back to you. So don't let them lose face. Utilize the market and the interpretation of data. Magic versus transparency. Okay, this isn't a magic show what we do, folks. Although there's a lot of people out there that still like to pretend it's a magic show. Poof! Hey, I got you this great deal. Well, that's only because that's available and it makes sense to you. Okay? Transparency. It's okay to ask people to pay more money. It's okay. But show them why. Now, here's some examples of interpretation of data. Let's take a look at this Carfax. This is a particular Carfax of a 2016 Civic LX. Now, this comes from a real deal. This comes from a deal where the customer offered a ridiculous number, and somewhere upwards of $4,000 or $5,000 off the price of the unit, just to see what would happen. In fact, I spoke with the customer, and she was, and this is in the book, Concepts of Modern Automotive Sales, and she was actually kind of wonderful. I mean, she was insulting, oozing of sarcasm, and I just couldn't stop but admire that. But her number was pulled out of the air, and we had to set it straight here. This is not how things are done anymore. And basically, she asked me if I ever bought a house, and I said I had, and she said, well, didn't you start low? And I said, well, not too low. And she said, why not? I said, I might insult the seller, and she kind of laughed at that, and we moved forward. But what I did is, in turn, pulled a Carfax, pulled a Kelley Blue Book, and interpreted data for her and sent her data. So let's take a look at this vehicle. This is an example of a used car that should get all the money. I think most of us would agree. There's no accidents reported, no damage, one owner, decent service records, and it has obviously the mileage rating, everything is in line. So this is a vehicle that should bring all the money, as opposed to a vehicle that has multiple accidents, multiple damage reported, multiple owners, and no service. Keep these things in mind. No accidents, no damage, one owner, service history, versus multiple accidents, multiple damage, multiple owners, and no service. Okay? So let's moving on. Now let's take a peek, and this is where it's illustrated over here, on this very same vehicle. And it has a range, doesn't it? This Kelley Blue Book, they all have the range. And I remember at a workshop, I started utilizing some of this, and I had somebody from the back of the room yell out, "We already do that." Okay, great. I'm glad that you already do that, but do you do this? Do you dig in a little bit deeper with multiple sources? And I found out that they did not. So let's take a look at it. You have a range here. And it also matters if it's certified or not, but that can be pulled with Kelley Blue Book. But you have a range of $14,500 roughly to $16,600, typical listing price around $16,000. The customer wanted to be at $12,500 out the door, and that's just not going to happen on this car. The car was priced at $15,999 and should sell for more than that. Think about it. Typical listing is 16. This has no accidents, one owner, no damage, good maintenance. This car should sell 17, 17 and a half or better. And this was explained. Went ahead and scanned this over to her and showed her that to buy a vehicle like this, you'd almost have to have a branded, for that money that she wanted, you almost have to have a branded title. These are things that can help us explain, and this is interpretation of data. So let's take a look again at this a little bit more closely. On the left side, the vehicle with multiple accidents, multiple owners, damage, no maintenance should sell what? Probably in the 13s maybe. Or certainly 13s, 14. But the vehicle on the right side, no accidents, one owner, no damage, good maintenance, should sell upwards of 17. So again, just going through that. Pull this all the time and utilize this and utilize Carfax together. And use it when it's an asset. It almost always is. But you need to take a look at it. And you can utilize this with trade-ins as well. If the trade-in is a nice car, it should bring good money. However, if it does have multiple accidents, or if it has an accident or multiple owners or damage, you can utilize that to reduce the value of the trade-in as well. Because why? We have to represent a value for their friends and family when they come in, and for our good customers. We must sell our vehicles for the proper price if we're to grow. And that's what we want to do. That's why we're different. That's why we're special. Okay, so this is just an example of the worksheet on this, and the price was again adjusted to $14,999 from $15,950 or what have you. So the price was adjusted, was market adjusted. They've been calling these things market adjustments for 20 years, and you can call it a market adjustment. Let's just say, for instance, and you want to be very careful with this as a sales consultant, you don't want to utilize this unless you have to. But let's just say you have a customer that you've done all these different things, built all this value, countered their concerns, and you're still close. You can, with the permission of your sales manager, offer a market adjustment, a premature market adjustment. Say if this vehicle lasts, and it won't because it's a very nice unit, but if it does last another 10 days or 15 days, the market will adjust itself perhaps to this price. If we're able to go ahead and do this, can we move forward today so you can take delivery of your new vehicle? And that's a counter and a transition and a close. It's an opportunity to close the deal. Now, at any rate, this customer wanted to be at $12,500 out the door. Well, she put the additional $1,900 down for a total of $3,900 down based on the information that she received. And this was done over the internet, folks, not face-to-face. This was done over the internet. Now imagine that, and yet we have BDC departments afraid to call customers out or make them justify their data. What are we so afraid of? We have their information, don't we? We have their contact information. We can always try to contact them back. We can always get a manager involved. Why not challenge when they make a silly offer? Why not continue to build value? And why not interpret the data for the customer and explain to them that they should be paying more money even than that? Sell from strength. Sell from strength. Now let's take a look at TrueCar. This is kind of interesting. Now, this happens to be a Malibu, and this is somewhat an old slide or old JPEG. But at any rate, it shows an average savings of $3,300 off the vehicle. How much of that is made up of manufacturer discounts? I don't know, but I can imagine a lot of it can be. So we utilize those first, and we take a look at that. Now, but it says market average. Now, if someone wants to be below market average, and market average should allow you still to make some profit, we would hope. TrueCar has changed quite a bit over the years, come a little bit more in line. Still not a huge fan. I will say that on a live webinar. Not a huge fan of the way they operate and how they continue to take dollars from the dealership. If they really wanted to be of better value, they should only take their $300 when the vehicle sells for the TrueCar price and not below like it usually does. But that's another story. At any rate, so the market average should bring us some profitability. The problem is that people start looking at the best deals, the best buys, the best pricing. Okay, so you have over here, you have an excellent price, you have great prices, you have fair prices. Now take a look at what these might be, and they'll show you on TrueCar. They don't actually have it listed here, but they'll show you, and all of a sudden you get an excellent price, great price, your profitability is pretty much shot. Okay, fair price is kind of where you're eyeing this, and this is where you'd like to be, around a market average if at all possible. So how do you combat this? Well, what goes into an excellent price or a great price? Why might some consumer be able to get an excellent price or a great price? Well, doesn't the price of demonstrators fall into this? Sure. Doesn't the price of service loaners fall into this? Doesn't the price of damaged vehicles that have been repaired fall into this? How about vehicles that utilize incentives for which that particular customer doesn't qualify? Yeah, those are involved in this also. So you have to interpret data and let the customer know that. If you want to buy this vehicle or that vehicle and you qualify for all these incentives, why, of course you can pay for that. That says nothing about if it's a popular color, popular equipment, or what have you. So there are ways to go about this to continue to build value, but it must be known that interpretation of data is now part of the sales process, or it should be. Feigned indifference is an absolutely wonderful concept because it flies in the face of all of those teaching, what do I got to do to sell you a car today? Okay, if I get you this price, will you buy it right now? Hold on just a minute. Somebody comes in the door, and we'll talk about this person, and says, if the real deal's right, I'm going to take the car today. Who wants to sell me a car? So let's watch a short video that introduces feigned indifference. Now, I don't remember exactly when it was that I first recognized feigned indifference for what it is and how powerful it is and how important it is that we practice that on a consistent basis. But I do remember what reminded me of it and what actually made everything click, the actual instance that I knew what power it did have. And that was a long time ago, probably, I want to say 1993, and a bunch of us were standing around like we shouldn't do, smoking cigarettes and standing by the door and waiting for Saturday night to come to a close. Well, one of the consultants, the best consultant of the group, who is now a finance manager and a very successful one for many, many, many years, was standing at the front. He was smoking Marlboro 100, and this young man came up in a sporty car with his girlfriend and addressed all of us, but this gentleman was standing closest to him. But he said, I want to buy a car today. Who wants to sell a car today? Don't you want to sell a car today? And I guess, we had created that by our question, what do I got to do to sell you a car today? Even though that question shouldn't happen anywhere near the front of the process, but we're going to get into that and keep repeating that over and over. But this gentleman just basically took quite a long drag on a cigarette and said, I don't care if you buy a car today or not. And I was thinking, pretty powerful. What it did basically, and again I recognized it a bit later, was it took control of the situation back. And it did right away. Now no longer was that person doing all the talking or demanding anything. It was this gentleman who took control and minimized the situation, at least for the time being. The funny thing was he ended up selling and delivering him a car. But it all began that way, by gaining the control back. Now, it always doesn't work that way. In fact, that's more of an example of real indifference and total indifference, whereas my concept, feigned indifference, is to pretend to have no bias one way or the other, whether somebody buys a car right now or not. And this can work a number of different ways, and we're going to take a closer peek at it in just a little bit here in the program. But what it does basically is take the control back. Now, customers practice feigned indifference. This one didn't, but a lot of customers practice this on us all the time. They're trained not to show a large amount of interest in the vehicle, even though it may be their dream car, to tell us they're not buying right now, tell us the price is too high, and these are all done to set up a negotiation or a big discount in their mind. So we have to do the same thing. In other words, please buy when you see value in what you're purchasing, and take as long as you need. These are forms of feigned indifference. I do remember when I had a gentleman come in, I believe it was an attorney from the Milwaukee area, this was years and years ago, came in, nobody waited on him, so I went up to him and greeted him, and he said, well, I need your best price on this vehicle right here, and I need to have this car appraised, and I only have 10 minutes. And I said very nicely, I said, well, thank you for choosing to spend some time with us today. Would you like to go ahead and set an appointment for when you have more time? And this was not the reaction he wanted. He was expecting people to jump through hoops and do everything that he was told they would do in this case. But actually what had happened was he kind of went, no, and we actually had a common ground and built some rapport, and I sat him down at the desk, and he ended up letting us bring one in, actually from another facility, do a locate, and bring him a vehicle. So it was a big win for us. But at any rate, that's part of feigned indifference, as it will be explained to you. But it's so powerful, and it has to be used all the time. We have to make sure that the customer understands that they have all the room that they need, that we are going to basically go through a process without telling them we're going through a process. Nobody cares about our processes, and we're going to get them to the end, and we're going to take really good care of them. But take a closer look at this program and move forward, understanding that feigned indifference has to be a big part of what you do every day.
So feigned indifference: to pretend to have no preference or bias with respect to whether your customer buys a vehicle today. That's the feigned part, as we talked about in the video. Feigned indifference: to pretend to have no preference or bias with respect to whether your customer buys a vehicle today. Okay? So how does one acquire feigned indifference? Well, the first way is it's inherent. People are wired that way. We all have different filters. We all have different strengths and weaknesses. But a lot of us are born with it. It's an inherent knowledge. We already have it moving forward. The second way is to discover it and then apply it. So in other words, you understand that if your month is made on the 15th, you look at customers maybe just a little bit differently. Your confidence level is a little bit higher. Other people's customers are a different set of rules as well, because there's no risk involved for you, or not as much as there would be if they were yours. But you discover that, hey, I feel differently. I treat my customers differently. My mindset is different with these customers. If the price is too high, not enough for the trade, okay, that's cool. That's fine. Okay, but you discovered that you're more confident this way, and you actually end up closing more deals that way. So it's discovered and applied. Learn trait. It's a tactic that we study in a format like this. We learn what it is, and then we begin to utilize it. So that's extremely important. Now, I had a situation with an impatient customer, and we all get these. So I was the only one on the floor. All the sales consultants were tied up. I remember this gentleman walking in, and this story is in Concepts of Modern Automotive Sales also. But he walks in, and there's no one there to wait on him except me, and I do. And I welcome him to the store and say, please forgive us, but all of our consultants are with other guests. Please make yourself at home, and I'll have somebody with you shortly. You're very important to us. And that is my word track. That's what I use all the time. That's what I teach my sales. That's what I teach my sales consultants to use, because it's extremely courteous, and it sets the tone. Not, I'm going to get somebody with you in 30 seconds. Not, hold it right here, I'll sell you a car today. Okay, look, we have people that are busy. We're a busy store because we're a great store, and we take great care of our people. If you would, please go ahead and wait patiently, and we'll take very, very good care of you. At any rate, this person was not in the mood for that. So basically, kept tapping his watch, looking at his watch, walking up and down, pacing. And after just a couple of minutes, he says to me, if you don't get somebody with me soon, I'm going to leave. To which I said that's the beautiful thing at our facility, is that you're not captive. You may go at any time. And he said, is that what you want me to do? I said, absolutely not. As I said, you're very important to us, but please understand that there's only so much that we can do. So we'd be grateful again for your patience. Well, he stuck around, and he ended up buying a car. But the fact of the matter is that the feigned indifference helped take the control back from this gentleman who was trying to gain it himself. He's extremely important, and we know that. And he wanted to be waited on, and I didn't blame him. The only problem is that a lot of times these people have to be put in their place. Who wants to sell me a car? I'm buying a car today. You know what a great response to that is? Buy the car when it represents a value. And we're going to look at that when we look at personality types here in just a second. So personality traits. You might recognize this person. This is a driver. This is a dominant personality. This is someone who can be impatient. They prefer to get things done quickly. All right, you can go ahead and read some of the rest of that. But we have to be direct with these people. And here's a word track that you can use with them. Perhaps you would like to reschedule for when you have a bit more time. It would be informative, quick, and effective. And that's for the driver that comes in and says, I want your best price on this car, I want the value of my trade-in, I want my payment, and I want this all in 10 minutes. Well, that's just not how it works, folks. I'm not gonna trip over myself to go ahead and accommodate that person. I would rather say perhaps you would like to reschedule for when you have a bit more time. It'll be informative, quick, and effective. We want to take great care of you. You can add warm fuzzies, and we'll talk about those. But that's to make a person feel a little bit more important and intelligent. But you're very important to us, and we want to take great care of you. And you can add these. But you have to take the control back from the driver. And that's the way you do it. I'm buying a car today. Who wants to sell me a car? If the deal's right, I'll buy a car. And again, you can come back with, please buy the vehicle whenever it represents a value to you. That being said, I'm Rob. And you are. And go right into it. Welcome to the store. Begin the process. Very, very good. Now let's talk about the amiables. The amiables are the nicest people in the world, but they might be the most difficult. Okay, because they don't want any type of confrontation. They're going to agree with you, but they're not going to commit to anything. And that's maddening. So asking for the business multiple times, making them feel comfortable is the surest way to fall into this deal. So what you want to do is make them even more confident and comfortable because they're going to commit that way, because they don't want to commit. You're doing a wonderful job as a consumer, and please take all the time you need. But if I might ask, what would make you confident enough to do business now rather than later? And we all know how to build urgency. We can talk about incentives the way they are right now, probably being better than they will be ever. The only place for interest rates is to go up. You have to build urgency in the process. But if you do that with these folks and you get them to commit, then you can get a deal. But the thing with the amiables, again, is that they're also fearful. But here, let's talk about the driver and the amiables, and how certain word tracks of the concept of feigned indifference is effective with all personality types. There's other personality types, but I'm just going to focus on the driver and the amiables right now. Okay, so let's say you have an amiable that comes in and says, I'm not buying today, just trying to gather some information. And you have the driver, give me all your information, and I need it in 10 minutes. With that person, we already talked about the word track. Right? You can invite them to make an appointment, or you can say, please buy the vehicle when it represents a value to you. Now there's the key. Please buy the vehicle when it represents a value to you. Let's use that word track for both types of customers, the amiable and the driver. So the driver comes in and says, give me your best price. I need a value in my trade-in. I need it in 10 minutes. If the deal's right, I'll buy a vehicle. And you say, well, perhaps you'd like to reschedule for when you have a little bit more time. And please buy the vehicle whenever it represents a value to you. So the amiable comes in and says, I'm just looking, I'm not buying a vehicle right now, just need to gather some information. And then you say, please take all the time you need, buy the vehicle when it represents a value to you. Same word track, different meaning. To the amiable, it makes them more comfortable. To the driver, it takes control back. So it's kind of interesting when you take a look at it from that viewpoint. As we talked about before, counter every chance you get. Counter the customer when they have misinformation, or when they've jumped to an improper conclusion, or they're just spewing anything that may be inaccurate. Go ahead and counter them, because what it does is it takes control back. It makes you appear more confident, and you are more confident. And they will listen to you. They'll be more receptive to what your words are. Yes if or yes but. I recall a seminar where the speaker was saying, I like to use the words yes if or yes but when a customer has a concern. Now, I am against that, and I'll tell you why. Because the customer doesn't hear the if or the but in most cases. They just hear the yes, and it makes it a little bit more difficult to do your job. So, counter. Now, basic counter transition close. That is a form of the technique that we're going to go over here in just a minute. Now, the counter, for instance, is your trade is worth what it is for the same reason you can buy ours for what you can. The transition might be understanding that. Can we go ahead and move forward with the paperwork? That is a basic counter transition close to the deal. You can do a counter transition close to a presentation. For instance, and we'll get into the pricing here, the price is too high. for this particular vehicle. Okay, actually this vehicle has been selling very well for a little bit more than this. Knowing that, let me show you why it's bringing the money. That's a counter transition close to a presentation. Retreats, warm fuzzies. Please take all the time you need. Buy the vehicle whenever it represents a value to you. You're very important to us. Your words carry weight in the community. We want to make sure that you're treated well so that you can say great things about us. This is a combination of retreats and warm fuzzies. Third-party examples. Now, a third-party example is powerful because it's somebody else. It's not you saying the words. A third-party example can be, for instance, just the other day, not too long ago, just last week, I had a gentleman in who had the very same concern. And when we went over this information, he found out that the concern was not warranted, and he bought the vehicle right then and there. It's just an idea of a third-party example is all. And they're extremely important. Feel, felt, found, that method. I know how you feel. Many have felt that way until they found out. That's a third-party example is what it is. So we utilize everything that we have at our disposal. And that represents part of the technique. So let's go over the worksheet. And this was actually pulled from You Don't Have to Say No. You see that in the lower left. Kind of cool. It's kind of a neat graphic. But the technique in its full version takes a concern and counters it. You counter-respond to that. And then you analyze the guest's reaction. In other words, if it's positive, you're going to close. If it's neutral or negative, you're going to go to a third-party example. And those began just yesterday, just last week, not too long ago, what have you. Analyze the reaction again after the third-party example. If it's positive, close. If it's neutral, close. And the reason we do that for neutral this time is you got to close sometime. You don't always have to be closing. Don't go back to that cliche. But you should close as much as you can. Ask for the business all the time and numerous times. If it's negative, go ahead and pull back. Retreat just a bit. You're in control. You're the boss. Okay, you have to see the value. So pull back and then roll right back into it. This being said, when you talk about that concern, and then counter again differently. So this takes practice, yes, but it's something that is absolutely vital to becoming elite. And this is one of the things that we talk about, particularly for those that are newer in the business. But if you've done this in the past, this might be a bit of a reboot. This is relatively fresh information, gang, I will tell you that. So let's talk about Beyond the Walkaround. Beyond the Walkaround was written in 2014, and it actually sprung from You Don't Have to Say No, which was written and produced in 2008. Feigned Indifference and the technique were introduced in this book, and it's done really, really well, so thank you for that. We've got really good reviews. I think I'm at a 4.9 on 49 on the audio book, so please, pick up the audio book if you can. You'll like it quite a bit. But this emphasized the importance of professional courtesy, and we have to have that. We have to have tone. We have to have environment. We have to have all these things that make the customer what? More comfortable. The more comfortable they are, the more receptive to our words they will be. And that is vital to our success. The Concerns Journal was published in 2018, and it's a wonderful tool. What it is it is a journal. It's not. There's no narrative involved. There's no stories. There's no anything like that really. There's some definitions, but mostly it's just a place to put your counters and fill it with notes and practice. And this is something that I decided to come out with because I just thought it was vital. I just thought it was very, very important to the sales consultant to have this, to be able to scribble notes, be able to look at them or look them up relatively quickly. You can date it, understand exactly where they came from and what situations were involved, and move forward. So that's something that was put together in 2018. Concepts of Modern Automotive Sales, just this year, just within the last couple of months. Great new book. Focuses a little bit more deeply on market-based pricing, feigned indifference, and the technique. As is said here, leadership, BDC, and equity mining are also focal points. We're not going to get into those so much today, but that's something that will be in a future webinar, is to get an idea how to deal with that leadership on the floor, how to interact with BDC, how to best use equity mining. These are just really, really, really important concepts for today, and I wanted to bring those to light. So those are the three works that are available right now. Now, why do we want to evolve? Why do we need to evolve? Well, let's take a look at that. What do I got to do to sell you a car today? Take a look at the trust factor, or the lack of trust between us and the consumer because of the strategies and tactics utilized over the last 4 decades. We have to change. We are changing. A lot of us are changing. The situation with the pandemic is forcing us to do a lot of things that makes it more comfortable for us to be with the customer. We have to wear masks. We have to social distance. We can't be as in your face, intimidating, obviously. We have to try something different. We have to interpret data. With the new age of information, our sales profession is primed and ready for a new identity. So I'll let you go ahead and read the rest of this yourself. But the fact of the matter is that we have to reinvent ourselves. As people, we reinvent ourselves if we want to get better every few years, every decade perhaps, maybe even more frequently than that is the norm for some of us. But we have to reinvent ourselves to make sure that we stay consistent with the expectations of our customers. And the expectations of our customers right now are being influenced by, I hate to say the word, but companies like Carvana that are trying to go pure digital. But they're still going to need these word tracks. They're still going to need these for the algorithms, even if they want to get into AI, artificial intelligence. If they want to utilize all these things, they still have to program the algorithms, and they still have to be able to counter a customer. They still have to make a customer feel important and intelligent. But we have to do that even better than before. So that's why we're going to need to evolve. And that's extremely important. But transparency and interpretation of information. There's no longer any need for deceptive practices. There's whole bunches of information out there right now. The problem is there's a lot of misinformation. So the customer's going to believe whatever benefits them, just like we're going to use what benefits us. So if you want to talk about what we need to be better at, we need to be better than them at this interpretation of information and convincing them that this is correct and this is what the market will bear. This is exactly what this program is about. So let's talk about the framework of Hamilton sales training. And this has been the case for many, many years. But number one is the pursuit of customer comfort and consultant confidence. These two items are directly proportional. In other words, as one increases, so does the other one. If one drops, the other one drops as well. So the comfort level of the customer is extremely important. Now, if we're not confident, that comfort level is going to drop. They're not going to hear what we have to say. So no matter how good we are with our words, no matter what we know, if they're not listening to us, we don't have a shot. I mean, you've got to make sure that comfort level is high. But if the customer comes in and you can see they're uncomfortable right away, inexperienced sales consultants or ones that are not naturally confident or can't adjust that are going to become less confident, and it's going to be a downward spiral because they're going to keep bringing the customer down. But what we want is consultants to be so confident that they're bringing that comfort level up so that the customer is going to hear and believe and understand. That's what that's all about. Pursuit of customer comfort and consultant confidence. The reason it's a pursuit is because, boy, it's hard to get there. There's so many different roadblocks and things that can get in the way of these things. Anybody on the showroom floor, that's why I'm so cognizant of what goes on the showroom floor. Anybody saying the wrong thing can destroy a customer's comfort level and basically blow the deal before it even gets started. That's just one of the things that we talk about. Practice of feigned indifference. We go over the feigned indifference. We pretend to have no bias or preference as to whether someone buys a vehicle or not that day. And all of a sudden, they become more comfortable. They open up to us. And the reason we practice it is it's just like meditation, because it sure is difficult for us to have feigned indifference because we want that deal today. But remember, it's pretend. It's pretend. We are going to ask for the business multiple times and we want to buy the car today. You know what's funny is that the more you practice feigned indifference, the more deals that day come about. It's amazing. The utilization of market-based pricing philosophy and the technique. So we're going to utilize and set the marketplace, and we're going to utilize the technique counter-transition close. So we put all these things together, and I guarantee you're going to, no matter what your sales process, you're going to have much greater success, much greater closing percentages, much greater gross written, because you're going to be able to ask for the money and have the yes come. Counters to price concerns. So we're going to talk about this very briefly before we get off the air here. That's too high or too much money. Ever heard that one before? I bet we have. Instead of going, what do you want to pay, which will drive your managers crazy because it doesn't matter what they want to pay, right? The market sets the price. It doesn't matter. So when the customer says it's too much money or that's too high, you can still drill down. When you say the price is too high, do you mean it's too high for the vehicle or more than you would like to spend? Now, why would you ask that question? Because it's value versus budget. If it's value, all of our vehicles are priced to market, in fact, a bit below. That's a positive value statement that we talked about earlier. Understanding this, let me show you why it's worth the money. Transitioning close to presentation. What have you read or heard that helped you target a different figure, and what would that be? That's a counter. Now, this is interesting because you can use this type of counter with a trade-in as well. And you recall back to when we talked about the trade-in values, the trade-in concerns. Okay, what have you read or heard that led you to a different figure, and what might that be? Once you set the marketplace, and once you set that as the pricing, all of a sudden things become a little bit different. They can't just throw a number out of the air. They have to justify it. If it's budget, when you say it's more than you wanted to spend, did you target dollars to pay cash or a payment to finance? Cash. You have to see the value in the vehicle. Also keep in mind that there's no relationship between what you have budgeted and what this vehicle will bring in the marketplace. Cash or payment. Now here's one that comes in very, very handy. Just the other day, one of my very good customers decided it was easier to find a little bit more in her budget now rather than discover in a year or two that she settled for a vehicle she really didn't want, only to have it cost her thousands to trade out of it. And that's a third-party example in a counter. Now that actual word track was developed on the drive home from a sales meeting. So you can see how valuable these things are. And I like the physical hands-on driving to a meeting, having a seminar actually rather than a webinar, because I think that you get a chance to share a little bit more, from your teammates or from like individuals. I think that's extremely important. Counters to price concerns. Number one, we have found that this particular vehicle with this equipment has been selling very well for very close to this figure. Number two, we will not lose a deal over dollars. Your referrals and repeat business are very important to us. Number three, we will happily provide you with a wonderful price for this unit. Let's make certain it is one you would like to own. Understanding that, let me show you why it's bringing the money. You didn't see this on this particular slide, but the fact is that that's a transition to what? A presentation. You bet. At our facility, our market-based pricing philosophy makes it simple and easy for everyone, and you always get more than what you pay for. The price for this vehicle is more than I think the vehicle's worth. So going back to value, let's say the customer has this concern. Actually, this vehicle with this equipment is selling very well for just a bit more than this. Based on your research, what have you read or heard? What are your expectations? Same thing we went over in the past, but just kind of reinforcing it right now for you. These are extremely powerful, and you need to learn these, and you need to use them every single day. The price for this vehicle is more than I wanted to spend today. Going back and reiterating what we talked about, you have to see the value and understand there's no relationship between what you might have budgeted and what the vehicle is worth or what it will ultimately sell for. Remember, the market dictates that. This being said, or understanding that or knowing that, and now you can transition and close on a presentation, look at another vehicle, do whatever you need to do. Price for this vehicle is more than I want to spend today. Just the other day, one of my very good customers found it easier to find a little bit more in her budget now rather than discover in a year or two that she settled for a vehicle she didn't really want, only to have it cost her thousands to trade out of it. So again, we reiterate this one because it's extremely powerful. This works with payments too. A little bit more every month, and you're getting the vehicle that you want, and it's not going to cost you thousands to trade out of it. It's something to try before you simply say, what do you want to pay? Or what do I need to do? So we're going to reiterate the pursuit of customer comfort and consultant confidence, the practice of feigned indifference, the utilization of market-based pricing philosophy, and the technique. And these things are all available to study in Beyond the Walk-Around and Concepts of Modern Automotive Sales. And those are available obviously in print version, e-version, and Audible or audio version. Thank you so much for spending time with me today. It has been a great pleasure of mine to do this.
Please send an email to rob@hamiltonsalestraining.com with any comments. Understand that we'll be moving forward. This will probably be replayed, so you can watch it again at some point in the future. And remember, if you did not receive the handout, contact me, or you can call me, 815-988-1297, and I will send that out to you. But hamiltonsalestraining.com is the website. We are going to be having, on September 10th, is scheduled a 3-hour webinar, which will be extremely comprehensive, have 10 times the information that this had, and it's $249 for your entire facility. Okay, so I'm not going to get concerned with pricing it per person. It's the entire facility. If you want to put them into a conference room, play it. There will be a PDF workbook available. It's probably closer to 100 pages or more, but we'll go with 70 for now. But again, $249 for the entire facility. There will be breaks. It'll be just as if I am there in the facility with you, but obviously with social distancing and the pandemic and everything going on right now, this is the best way to go ahead and do things. But again, for that dollar amount is the entire facility. So please join me for that. Any comments or questions, please go ahead and send those in. And again, I am grateful for all the time that you did spend. Have a great day. We'll talk soon.